I will call the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission Finance Executive Committee to order for our Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, 6 p.m. meeting. And Ruth, will you do a roll call, please?
Supervisor Galloway.
Here.
Supervisor O'Brien. Mr. Smith. Ms. Wilkinson.
Here. And we'll know we do not have a quorum yet, but Mr. O'Brien is expected, so we'll know that when he arrives. But we are here today to go review the financial report and audit. And we have Mr. Foley from CPA, is a CPA from Robinson Farmer Cox. The audit committee meetings I've sat through now. A lot.
Well, one year, this guy didn't show up on time, and I said, we have the date wrong. There's no way in hell he would not be here on time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm one of those.
If
if I'm not 15 minutes early,
yeah,
I'm late.
Yeah,
and it's like I was like stuck in traffic.
Yeah,
and, I was
and I'm usually like that.
Yeah.
I was really concerned. I was only 5 minutes early.
So, yeah, we can go ahead and get started, and hopefully we did confirm Mr. O'Brien.
Yep, spoke to him today.
Great.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, thank you all for having me. So we have completed the audit for the commission's fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, and have issued our draft report and draft financial statements. Just brief overview of the audit before get into the results. And we came out and did the field work for the commission back was it the first week of October, and we're on site for about a week, going through doing our testing, and then we're able to get through everything pretty quickly, and then be able to issue a draft by the end of the month. There's really, as far as the audit that we do for the commission, there's really three main pieces to the audit. One, of course, we audit the financial statements to make sure that the commission's financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And then the other two pieces of the audit we do in accordance with government auditing standards, which is one is in addition to just looking at the numbers themselves, we look at the internal controls the commission has over its financial reporting, and so we'll test those controls in order to design and gain an understanding of those controls, and then test them in certain cases in order to gain our understanding and designing our audit test. And then the third piece of the audit is the uniform guidance audit, the federal compliance. So for the major federal programs this year, and this year the commission had a very big one. But for the major federal programs, OMB provides a compliance supplement with a list of compliance requirements that the commission has to comply with when it's expending its federal grant program. So that's another big piece of the audit. So included in the audited financial statements, there are three different reports from us that communicate the result. The first one is on page one of the report. This is our independent auditor's report. And in this report, it's where we state we did perform an audit of the financial statements, also where we issue our opinion on the commission's financial statements. And we have issued an unmodified opinion on the commission's financial statements, which is the cleanest opinion an auditor can give on the set of financial statements. Basically, an unmodified opinion means that the commission's financial statements have been prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And the other two reports from us are way in the back of the report. On page number 58. This is our on page 58. This is our report on the commission's internal controls over its financial reporting. This report was clean as well. It had no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. and the commission's internal controls over its financial reporting. Overall, we feel like the commission has strong internal controls in place. Just an example of that is the fact that we went through the audit and had no audit adjustments as part of the audit. So it's pretty common that when we go through an audit, we usually have something that we need to find that we need to adjust. So the fact that we didn't have to make any audit adjustments speaks to the strength of the internal controls the commission has over its financial reporting. Typically in places that the controls aren't so tight is where you see things slip through and adjustments that need to be made. And then the third and final report from us is 2 pages over on page 60. This is our report over the organization's compliance with its major federal grant programs in accordance with uniform guidance. This report was clean as well. Again, we noted no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the organization's compliance with its major federal grant programs. And we also noted no instances of non-compliance as part of the audit. So all three reports and opinions from us are clean. And also, again, no other items were noted as far as internal control issues that needed to be reported in a separate management letter. So those are the 3 reports from us. So if we go back kind of towards the front, the next piece of the report starts on page 4. This is management's discussion and analysis. So this report, this piece of the report is written by management. It's kind of more of a narrative overview of the fiscal year. So it starts off with some financial highlights and talks, and there's a lot of summarized financial information included in the tables in this report. So it'll talk about a lot of highlights about what was new this year, what changed between fiscal years. There's also just a description of the funds that the organization uses. And then kind of starting on page 8, there's a narrative related to the budget discussion and how the original and final budget and how that compared to the actual. And then it's starting on page 10 is the start of the financial statements for the commission. And so these first 2 exhibits that we have, Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, these financial statements are prepared on the full accrual basis, meaning that you'll see capital assets, any long-term debt, all that fund, pension, and OPEB stuff are included on the balance sheet, as well as things like depreciation expense are included in your expenses that are included on Exhibit 2. So for Exhibit 1, this is a statement of net position. This statement reports the assets and deferred outflows and liabilities, deferred inflows, and then the net position at the end of the fiscal year. So the commission had total current assets at the end of the fiscal year of 5.5 million. And then total assets of 6.2. And then liabilities, current liabilities 4.6 million. And we can see the total assets of 5.5 far exceeds the current liabilities, which is always a good financial indicator that the commission has sufficient funds to pay its current liabilities. And then ended the fiscal year with a net position of 1.3 million at the end of the fiscal year. And the net position is further broken down in between what the net investment in capital assets are, then there's a the restricted piece is the net pension asset that the commission has, and it's for the VRS program. Most entities are the other way. They have a net pension liability, but the commission has for probably since GASB 68 started, has always had a net pension asset, meaning that the VRS pension plans assets exceed the liability.
It's nice.
Great.
That's probably why your rate's so low. Yeah.
If I have a question on something further back, do you want me to wait till the end? This is more just general knowledge for me. When you're comparing budget to actuals in an audit, it notes, how close you were and what the variance is. Is there a best practice or an acceptable variance, or is it just recorded for the purposes of the audit? So for example, we amend our budget in March for all the financial reporting purposes.
Mhm.
And at that time, we're making our best guess what we're going to expend by June. And obviously with programs like VADI, there's wild variances from month to month, what actually happens. So it seems like there's a big gap between the budget and the actual, but is that normal and is that acceptable?
That can certainly, that certainly is normal, particularly when you have something
In the
like
millions.
the Vadi project, or like in your localities, your capital projects funds, you'll budget, X amount for a particular project, and that you only expend that as the project, incurs the expenditure. So I mean, you can definitely have big swings in between budgeted numbers and actual, because they are what you said. I mean, like you said, their estimate. So I mean, certainly, the thing you got to make sure of is you don't have the situation where you have expenditures in excess of appropriations.
Well, and for us, they're
Well, I
almost
mean,
all
here it's
pass
not-
throughs.
right,
So
yeah.
it's if we don't receive it in revenue, we're
Right,
not paying
yeah.
it as an expense. Okay. Thanks. That's helpful.
And the thing is too, I mean, with budgeting, you want to be careful that you're not too aggressive in your budgeting figures either, because if you're too aggressive in the revenue side, then, if you have a shortfall there, but then you come close on your expenditure side, that's where you can see financials turn. We had a locality that got in that situation where they were just way overestimating what their budgeted revenues were. And then of course, you're balancing a balanced budget. So got, and then you miss your revenues but you hit your expenditure mark, and then you see your fund balance go down. So
Problematic.
Yes, very. We went through a little phase of that, but we got over it, fortunately.
There was a statement in there about the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board getting moved from the general fund. Is that because it got set up as a function program and initially it was not? It said changeover from year to year.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not a
so-
special fund.
yeah, so last year was the start of
So
it.
just got
And so it just was basically included in the general fund. But then, right,
And then we set up
But-
separate bank accounts and we
yeah.
set up separate VIP accounts, all for the cigarette tax board, and they're no longer.
right, so now
It's on
it's shown as moved as its own separate column.
Got it.
And it's good for that to show separately anyway, because it's almost its own. I mean, it's got its own EIN and and its own tax ID number. There's some discussion of whether, maybe in going forward, if that should actually have be almost lifted out of this report.
And not be a part of the commission's
Right.
budget, but a separate budget
And
for the
then-
board,
Right.
and separately audited from the board,
Hmm.
because we're contracted to
Yeah.
be the fiscal agents.
Interesting.
But at very minimum, it needs to be, separated out, so
Sure.
that's why we went that direction this year. Plus, it's pretty significant as well. Page 11, Exhibit 2, this is a statement of activities. Again, this is on a full accrual basis, so you got depreciation expense included in the information. So this shows also the change in that position. So the net position for the commission increased by $69,000, almost $170,000 during the fiscal year. Moving over to page 12, the next set of exhibits, these are the governmental funds. So these exhibits are reported on the modified accrual basis. So, you don't have things like capital assets and debt on the in the financials. So exhibit 3 is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. And so we've got different columns for the various funds. So the general fund, which is the main operating fund, the Department of Transportation, which accounts for all the transportation grants, the home program, which accounts for the home program. And then again, two new columns this year. Again, we broke out the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board as its own fund. And then you also see the new column this year for the broadband. Last year that was just getting started, only had very little activity. This year it had significant amounts, so it really needs to be shown separately in its own fund. And then the other governmental funds, that's just all the rest of the smaller funds that are combined. So total assets for the commission at the end of the fiscal year, 5.7 million, compared to total liabilities of 4.7. And then the fund balance for the commission at the end of the fiscal year ended with a fund balance of a little over $1 million. And then that's further broke down between non-spendable, committed, and unassigned. Non-spendables, the prepaid expenses, and then there's the capital reserve that the commission had set up, and then unassigned, which is available for the commission's use. Exhibit 4 is just a reconciliation exhibit between how we get from the fund balance reported on exhibit 3 to the net position that you had on exhibit 1. Next page 14, this is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So this statement, again, for those funds shows the revenues during the year, the expenditures, and then change in fund balance. So in the general fund, showed a change in fund balance during the fiscal year of 133, almost 134,000.
Quick question on exhibit 3, is the unearned revenue just a contract rental, basically?
Yeah, unearned revenue is basically your deferred revenue.
Yeah, just a
So it's a liability. So basically what that represents is any funds that the commission's received that hadn't yet spent.
Gotcha, okay,
And then as those funds are spent, then those funds are released as revenue.
gotcha.
A lot of our deferred revenue is actually from our local government per capita, because they give it to us quarterly. So they give it to us in advance and then we spend it
That
down
makes
and then we
sense.
get it.
Okay.
So yeah, in exhibit 5 again, we've got the separate columns for the different funds. You can see that broadband fund that had a lot of big numbers to it this year. 13.5 million in activity. That may be more activity in that one fund than the commission's had over the last 5-6 years.
Fine.
Yeah. And then the last exhibit up front, exhibit 6, that again, that's just another reconciliation exhibit from how we get from the change in fund balance on exhibit 5 to the change in that position on exhibit 2. Starting on page 17 starts the notes to the financial statements. The notes to the financial statements discusses the significant accounting policies that the commission uses to prepare its financial statements. Also provides can provide more detail in the notes to provide more detail to some of the figures that you see in the financial statements. So again, note 1 is just a summary of significant accounting policies that the commission uses to prepare its financial statements. Note 2, which starts on page 25. It's just the note related to the deposits and the investments that the commission has, which the commission has invested in the Virginia investment pool. Note 3 is a detail behind the accounts receivable and due from other governments. It shows what's due from the various agencies. On page 27, note 5 is detail behind the capital assets. So it shows the various categories of the capital assets the commission has, as well as the depreciation that's been taken on those. Note 6 is just a disclosure related to the compensated absences. That's all the accrued leave that the employees have earned and have not yet used. Note 7 discusses the office lease. This is the only long-term outside of the pension and OPEB, the only long-term liability that the commission has. This was something that was new last year where GASB 87 was implemented. So previously it was an operating lease, so you always expense that as you paid it. But 87 now says that you have you show a right to use asset and then also the liability. Starting on page 30 is the note related to the VRS pension plan. And this note gives you everything you would like to know about the Virginia retirement system. And it goes on for several pages.
Fortunately, they write it for us.
I have a
Right,
question on
yeah.
the page 30. Mid-year, last year, the very first sentence, it says that new employees' VRS retirement plan starts after 6 months of employment.
Mhm.
Mid-year, the commission changed that to start pension upon hire.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to note that in here or if that's something that goes into next
No.
year's, because it's a full year, but we did change that.
All right. Yeah, we can make that note.
I have a list of little ones, I'll put it on it.
Okay.
so we don't have to note it. So, note 13, on page 38, this talks about the indirect cost rate for the commission. And then there's schedules further back that show the details of this calculation, but for the actual indirect cost rate for the commission this year was 56%, which was pretty lower than what it's been.
Yeah, and a very
in
good
previous years.
explanation in the
Yeah.
management report about realizing numbers.
And then note 14 is more VRS information related to the group life plan. So then after the notes, then there's a few more financial schedules included. Page 46 is a budget to actual. So exhibit 7 shows the commission's, the original budget, the final budget, the actual, and then how the actual numbers compared to the budgeted numbers. The next few exhibits are required information related to the pension plan and OPEB. So if you didn't get enough pension and OPEB information in the notes, you have about 6 more tables of information you can look at. And then some supplemental schedules, page 54. Schedule 1, this is just a schedule of expenditures for the general fund, so it kind of shows in a little more detail what was included in the general fund expenditures. Then the next 2 page.
Sorry, quick question here. So in the original budget, we have $41 million, but we got $19 million. What was that?
What page you on?
46.
Yes, that
Yeah, it would be
is
the
body. So mid-year, because it's a 3-year project and was projected across 3 years, and some of those, construction delays and supply chain things in the beginning that held it up, we had to push those into future fiscal years.
That's the one you say has a separate EIN? Was that?
No,
No,
that's
that was
the
Blue Ridge. Yeah.
cigarette tax board, yeah.
Yeah.
But all of that at some point will show up in 24 and 25, Tony. So it's just moving it, yeah.
Alright, so the next two schedules on page 55 and 56, this goes into the indirect cost rate. So schedule 2, page 55, this is the numerator. So this shows, this is the schedule of all the indirect costs that the commission had for the year. And then on page 56, schedule 3, this is the denominator. This is all the program personnel cost. And then at the bottom of schedule 3 shows the calculation and how you get to the 56% indirect cost rate.
This page is another thing that came up at an audit kickoff meeting. So we asked for this at an audit kickoff meeting to be included because we had a big blow up about the budgeted amount for the next year.
Right.
And so it's been in there ever since. The audit kickoff meeting also, we came up with the reserve fund formula at an audit kickoff meeting and how to present it. And now you're saying the Blue Ridge cigarette tax board might be another thing that I'm just talking about audit kickoff meetings give you a chance to get in depth on questions that you might have, Christine, or that, it gives you a chance to do something. And in fact, we did do in the middle of the year, or not the middle, but towards the end of 2018, we started doing the reserve because we had talked to David at the audit kickoff meeting, and it wasn't too late to, start doing it that year. So I'm just saying I'm not saying we should always have them, but I'm just saying they do have a function that's been pretty useful for us, and we could, I think we did think about it and decided we didn't need it, but you wouldn't want to probably do anything like change the Blue Ridge cigarette tax board to a separate report in the middle of the year. You'd probably want to wait till the end of the year to do it, but I'm just saying the audit kickoff meeting would be a good time to decide you're going to do it. That is what I'm saying.
What time of year did those occur?
The thing with
We would usually have them in the summer, so it'd be July or August.
right, and we
With
had
this committee?
Mhm.
Is
yeah,
that who it was?
and we did have it every single year
We
for
haven't done
quite
that
a
the last
while.
2
I
years,
think.
have we?
No,
Yeah, I think
I
since
don't remember
COVID.
doing one
Huh?
of those, okay.
I think since COVID, we haven't done them since COVID.
maybe, yeah, we got out of the habit and then just never got back to it at all. So it's kind of got a value anyway.
So that would obviously be for next year. It's too late for one for this year.
Yeah, I
But
think so.
is
Yeah,
that
'cause-
when we would consider whether or not we're gonna pull BRCTB out as a separate,
It gives you a great chance to address it thoroughly.
yeah?
That's what I can tell you. And so then you have plenty of time to decide you're gonna do it and work your system up so it's ready to do it. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And as far as the other thing, we could do it in a minute, which was start the reserve, and we did do it in a minute. But this was simply asking this schedule to be added to the audit report. It never had been. This was one that was internal, but we wanted them to just kind of glance at it for us. And that was Jenny Keller, who wanted it, in the audit report, yeah.
And with the cigarette tax board, we'd have to look at our agreement with them as well, because I know there's language in there right now that says they recommend a budget to the commission for
That's right.
inclusion, and it's
The way it
adopted
was set
budget.
up.
So would have to be some changes perhaps to that agreement.
If that
If,
were the direction we went, it
Correct,
could be that
yeah.
it stays
Right.
Yeah.
the way it is.
Yeah,
and
and
it's
it
just
gives you,
reflects separately.
several months to figure out whether
Okay.
you're interested in even doing it.
The other thing related to that I just noticed, and I don't know, I did not catch this the first 2 passes at this, but the contract date, the start date and end date,
Oh, yeah.
none of those are accurate. Those are
Okay.
actually hidden columns on our internal spreadsheet. So should I go in and update all of those to accurate and send them to you?
Yeah.
Because those are not accurate right
Yeah,
now.
well, thank you for noticing that.
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we just weren't updating that spreadsheet. We've got it in other places, but we can go find all that.
So then, the next section is the compliance section, which includes the two reports we discussed previously. And then on page 63 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. This schedule shows all the different federal programs that the commission expended money on during the fiscal year. And then page 65, the last page, this is the schedule of findings and question costs. This is just basically summarizes the results of the audit. Again, the commission got an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, no internal control or federal award findings. This shows the major federal program that was audited, which was the body program. And then again, that there were no financial statement findings or federal award findings or question cost.
Questions or comments?
So the only thing I noticed on page 62, and maybe this has been done in the past, audit was not designed for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls over compliance. Is that something that we've done in the past or something?
Yeah, that's standard language. So, I mean, when we're doing the audit, we don't actually, I mean, we look at the controls as part of the audit, but you're actually not you're not actually doing a full like audit of the internal controls. As part of the audit, you gain an understanding of what the internal controls are, and you test them. So, we do that as a part of being able to design our tests. So while we review the internal controls and look at them and in a lot of cases test them and see that they're, operating as they should, and then that way if they are, then that can reduce our substantive testing. You're not actually going through a full audit of the internal controls.
Has that been done here that you can recall? That someone has looked at the internal controls and actually expressed
Yeah, I
an
mean, you'd
opinion
have
on
to do
whether or
like
not
a,
they're-
you'd
yeah,
have
what is
to,
that
you'd have to
process?
do that would have to be a special engagement to have like an audit of the internal controls. Again, as part of the audit, we're looking at them, we're testing them. But we do it to the extent to where we use that to gain or to be able to design our test.
So even though you express no opinion on it, you're what I hear you saying is that you're essentially looking, and if you saw something,
If we saw something, that would be reported. So if we saw, I mean, there's a lot of reports where we have to issue significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, and it's because there's big internal control issues.
So that would, if you saw that,
That would
you
be
would then trigger a full audit, like what you're describing. At
Well,
that
there'd be
point.
findings.
Well,
and
there'd
then
be
you'd want to engage a
findings, and
separate
then
process.
if you wanted to do even more in depth.
Right, is where you would do the
Yeah.
control type of audit that you're talking about there.
Right.
We did do a notebook one year, was some time ago, of our internal control system, which is still probably kicking around somewhere, huh?
Oh, huh.
Yes. Yeah,
Probably.
one doesn't know for sure. So I think there's a spiral binder out there in the world that has a pretty good description of our internal. Do you remember that at all? David, do you remember that at all?
The what?
A spiral binder that we did of the internal control system? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like I said, and we look at processes and all that. So I mean, we're looking at it as part of the audit, but technically we're not You're not actually auditing the internal control. We're just evaluating it to be able to design our tests so that we can
Saying, are we
issue.
following
So,
our own
right,
internal
and so,
controls?
and that we can issue, understand what the internal control environment is, so that we can issue our opinion on the financial statements.
Now you know there's a binder.
Well, we do have some
You have to
shit.
you have to go find it.
Shelves of binders, I'll see if I can find it.
Anyway,
Alright, so looks good.
Any other questions or comments?
well, I was just saying, back to the audit committee meetings, I think you can ask David questions at the audit kickoff. So if you wanna ask him questions, and I think, remember asking him questions about this binder. But also, if you wanna ask questions about the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board, how to go about it, if you decide to do it. It's a good time to find out a lot of stuff, and that way, when you move forward, you're doing it, in a good way. So it's pretty handy, I think.
Yeah, there's now, not to say, certainly if you have questions throughout the year and all that, you can always reach out to us. That doesn't mean.
We do.
Yeah, exactly. Which means that doesn't mean that if we have audit kickoff meetings, that you stop emailing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff, you will discuss whether you have an audit kickoff meeting or not. The audit kickoff meeting is just a chance for us all to get together and talk about the upcoming year. If there's anything you guys have concerns about that you want us to pay special attention to. That's really what that meeting's for.
It
And
does.
there are things like what you pointed out that drive. But in addition to that, we certainly stay in communication with them throughout the year, and as they have questions, or we don't have to
Right.
wait for the kickoff meeting to
Mhm.
Yeah,
work,
absolutely.
iron
Like as
some
we
of that
start new
stuff out.
programs and things, making sure we're setting them
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and it gets the other people that are on the executive committee involved, the executive and finance committee, so that gives you a chance to, you may have already talked about it, but it gives you an
You
early
guys a
chance to
hear
get,
it.
to weigh in.
Great.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, well then we need to take action, so we need a motion for the Executive Finance Committee to recommend approval of the fiscal year 23 financial report and audit to the full commission.
I recommend that with the edits to be made by Christina, that we recommend approval of the audit report for the full commission.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are good, 3-0 for approval.
We don't have to state what the edits are, do we? No.
I have an ongoing little tally of little
Little
ones
tiny
that we'll
twitchy
make before the
things,
final.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes, if you just send that to me, I'll make sure
I
they're.
will. Yeah, I'm gonna
They're
wait till I
incorporated.
update the dates of all the contracts. I'll send it to you all
Yeah,
in
okay.
one communication.
All right, and with that, we will
Good with that.
adjourn without objection.
Thank you all for being here. I'm about to pull out dinner
Just say.
into the Water Street Center, so we got you dinner as well if you would like some.
Okay.
We're going
Before the stuff, yep, you'll go to Water Street.